On now? Test, 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 test. You know, tell the difference between a preacher and a singer in church. It's how they verify the microphone. A preacher says test, test, and a singer says check, check. Anyway. Amen. All right. Good to see you tonight. We may have others come in as we're going along, and just ignore them. And or something I like to do is if they come in late, I'll stop preaching, and everyone just turn around and just stare at them, like, how dare you come in late? Anyway, so, but we're gonna have a good time tonight and tomorrow. I hope you can be. How many can be here tomorrow? Okay, good, awesome. So this is going to work out well. And then I kind of thought maybe more of the church folks might come out, and we'll see, how many are able to make it. And so we're going to deal with some things, the kind of more of the counseling side things tonight, but all related to, obviously, to counseling in relationship to the Hope Ministry. And then tomorrow we're going to focus more on the some program things, and we'll deal with some new things. We actually have done some new things this year. We've gotten a few new things done. We've got now sobriety tab tokens for people that are monthly. A keychain to go along with that for folks to be able to get the keep track of their monthly sobriety. That's a big thing for people, and very encouraging for them. We also have some new resources that are coming online here probably in July with the children's ministry side of things, and putting those type of things out. And we haven't done as many new books. I am working on some books, but our book work has slowed down because over the last year, I was sharing with Preacher that we had a staff member that was helping us, who we thought was supposed to be helping us, and then in July of last year quit, and we found out that he hadn't been doing things for a long time, and that was why we were so frustrated, going, why is this not working? And so then we ended up having to go back through everything and verify everything, and then find people that could help us specifically with websites. And thankfully, the websites are now all functioning properly. There's updates going on the websites. The big update has been done already, and now it's just improvements that are coming online. And one of the things we're working on that will be potential down. We haven't got this. This is kind of the next big project that we're working on for the program side of things is. We're taking all of the courses that I teach in counseling, all the video courses, and all the materials I've written, the Hope material, the Restoration Road for pornography, all my books that I've written. And I don't know if you've heard of AI before or not. Have you heard that lately? But you can. What we're working on is actually we're going to put all of that into a database. AI, and build an AI agent. And I've got someone that knows how to do that I've been communicating with. And it'll be where you would be able to go on and do a search on a particular topic, and it would pull up everything from the resources, from the videos on that particular topic for counseling resource. And so that's kind of our next big project. Now, don't anticipate that that'll be done like next month, or I mean, that's kind of a huge project, but we're just getting started in that. So we are working on new things, but also because of all the adjustments and trying to figure out all of this, and the learning curve, Angela is my, like, I could not do anything without her. She has really taken up a huge need in the area of dealing with the resources in particular. But we're now finally at that point where, okay, we can go back to getting more resources written. And it just took us about a year to get through that process. But we are in the process. In the midst of that, we have done some of these type of things. And this is not hope related, but there's a set of children's books back there now that we got done. First of seven children's books, which is the first of a series of 21, three sets of seven. And Angela's done all the graphics and stuff on all that. So she's done really, really good with that. And so anyway, there's just a lot of things that are in the works and a lot of things that are exciting coming on that. And we're looking forward to that. And I'll talk more about those things here as we go along, and particularly tomorrow. All right, we are going to talk about tonight the issue of our thought life. And you're familiar, I'm sure, with the Beating the Odds book, all right? And in the Beating the Odds book, we're just going to start here because you're hopefully already familiar with this. But there's an article, it's an important article. It's step number 7, Can You Be Free from Addiction? And the issue that people face in life, and this isn't just with addiction, but it's certainly strongly connected to addiction. The issue people face is dealing with the thought issues, right? You can be clean from drugs, from alcohol in a relatively short period of time, right? You can be clean. It's not in your system anymore. I was talking to a missionary today, Brother Wayne Grissom, who we sent out. He's in England, over there in Plymouth, England. And he and I were talking today. He came from a background of drugs and alcohol, got saved. And he was telling me this morning, he said, preacher, he said, I remember after I detoxed and I was going through all that, he said, maybe a couple weeks after detoxing, he said, I went to bed one night, just felt like chills and I felt horrible. And he said, I woke up in the morning and he said, I had sweated so much. And he said, my sweat was like this brownish, yellowish, it was just his body sloughing the remainder of the toxins that were in his system. He said, I had to throw my sheets away. I tried washing them and they were all stained, with all that. He said, I remember throwing those sheets away. And he said, we were just talking about the change God makes in us, right? And that was one of those things that he said. But here's the thing, on a chemical level, the substance itself can be gone in a matter of weeks, right? But the addiction is not gone when the substance is out of your system. Why? Because it's not the substance, it's the way you think, right? It's your thought life. Your thought life has to change to deal with the addiction. The substance, it of course is mind altering, yes, and it certainly affects your body and all those type of things. It affects your thinking, but the thought life has to change. And that article, step number 7, is where we really start that process. But we're going to get way deep in that tonight. This is where we're going to start, but we're going to be way deep in this issue of the thought life tonight. So one of the things that we do, and you're familiar, if you have your Beating the Odds book, you can look at it right there. But the chart here on page 11 in this book, in the bifold book, some of them are not page 11. If you have the larger, if you don't have one of these, raise your hand. All right, Angela, grab. No, we have it. I put 10 in the box. Yes, there is. Well, then you can't have another one. No, I'm just kidding. Then I must not have grabbed the right box, because I put actually 15 in one of those boxes. It's okay. It'll be okay. I'm just saying there are at least 15, because I put all of them in there. So anyway, nonetheless, this chart is kind of a start introduction to the thought process, right? And the goal or object of this chart is to express the way, we'll get it later, is express the way that the thoughts produce our lifestyle, okay? And so when it says inner man, outer man, it's just illustrating that the way we think will be reflected in the way we behave, right? And so as you look through that chart, you've got, and I'll put it up here on the board for those that don't have it. Just hope one of these markers is going to work. All right. Is it this one? Hey, first time. What amazing. That was a miracle, really, in and of itself. So, yeah, permanent marker, it says. So, anyway, all right. So we have the way we think, thoughts, right? And our thoughts are where our feelings are developed from. All right. Feelings are reflective of the way you think. Okay, let me interject this idea here just a second and explore it, because the feelings that we experience are a reflection of how we perceive the circumstances or situation that we're in, right? If if I were to say, how many of you like being scared? Very few people would raise their hand. But if I said, how many people before you were saved enjoyed going to, haunted houses, right? Or roller coasters. You can be saved and enjoy roller coasters, though. Okay, or those type of things, right? Something that say, well, why do you enjoy it? Oh man, that exhilaration of the what? The scared, being scared, that fear. But why is it different than when someone actually breaks into your house with an axe? It it's real, right? And yet the feeling that you get is actually the same feeling, right? That that shock, that terror, immediate terror, and your heart races, and you're like your mind goes fritzed and all that. It's the same feeling, but what's the difference? In your mind, your thoughts, you know what you're walking into here isn't real. And so you get scared because of the shock of it, but your mind quickly says, but it's not real, right? And you're able to put the fear away and continue going through, right? Or you're on that roller coaster and that drop hits and you're anticipating it, and that anticipation, and then and you're screaming your head off, but then it is controlled. You're fastened in. It's not the same as driving through the Rockies and going over the ledge, right? I mean, that's totally different, and it's how you think about it, right? Your thoughts it inform your feelings. So sometimes feelings can occur spontaneously, and when those things occur spontaneously, we're talking in that sense often about the physical reaction that happens in the moment, right? The physical, because there is a chemical release of that in the body that drives that adrenaline up, right? And those sensations that come through all of that. But then quickly in those controlled environments, the mind is able to bring that down, right? And so the thought life controls the feelings. But often what happens is we become so akin or attuned to our feelings that we begin to allow our feelings then to direct our thinking, right? And so our thoughts can control our feelings, but often we allow our feelings to lead our thinking. Okay. And that's when we get into the anxiety and the what ifs and all that. And we have this feeling of dread. I just have this feeling of dread. I don't know what's going to happen. Something's going to happen. And our thoughts are chasing our feelings instead of controlling our feelings. Okay. But the Bible says this in Proverbs, as he thinketh in his heart, so is he, right? So the thoughts all through the scriptures, your thought life, and we'll go through a lot of scripture here tonight, but all through the scripture, the thoughts are the key factor in guiding and directing the life, okay? And your thought life is the key factor in getting victory in the area of addiction. It's the key factor in getting victory in any area in your life, but also including the area of addiction. The addiction issue is in the thinking. Now, there's two aspects to thinking, and we'll go through a lot of different ways we'll look at this, but from a practical standpoint, there's the thoughts of the soul, your inner man, right? And then there is the brain. And the brain does think, right? But it's not the sole source of thought. And so we have this kind of this problem. There's some people that go, well, your brain does all the thinking and it's just a chemical reaction and therefore you can fix it with throwing more chemicals in it, right? And there's some who, by the way, I say, are people really believe this? Yes, there are people that believe that the brain does no thinking, and it does none, and it's just the soul, right? Because the Bible says, as he thinketh in his heart, therefore the brain never thinks. Okay, now both extremes are wrong, right? Your brain does think, but it primarily thinks about the things of the world, the things of the flesh, the things that it wants, right? And it also is a process plant, if you will, for the soul to work through issues and store information, right? So it does both. The brain thinks certainly about what the physical body wants, and the brain says, body like chocolate, right? Body like beer, body like drugs, and drugs make body feel good. Get drugs, right? Get drink and eat chocolate and whatever the case might be. So the physical brain thinks about the physical things. And in that process, you've got different aspects of the brain that are engaged. Your brain has three major distinctions to it. There's the core stem, spinal stem, right, where your autonomous nervous system is functioning from. That's your breathing, and your heart rate and pulse, and all those type of things. Those are things. Your digestive system. Those are things you don't think about, but you do. Does that make sense? Like you're not having conscious thought, breathe, breathe, breathe. I hope that's not going on right now, right? If so, raise your hand. We need to get you to the hospital. And so, but at the same time, you're not having those thoughts about heartbeat and all that. But that is all going on in your brain right now. It's running all those bodily functions. Okay. Outside of that portion, then, or connecting there, the thalamus is what connects the brain stem to the limbic system. Now, the thalamus is a very important part of your brain, but it's not one of the big parts. It's kind of considered in connection with the limbic system. But the thalamus is a big part of the chemical function of the body. It actually regulates a lot of the chemicals in the body, and it can get messed up pretty bad by substances that we ingest or a lack of proper diet and so forth. If we don't eat the right things, the right things that we eat can stimulate the thalamus to function properly, and if we don't eat well, if we don't eat right, it can damage the thalamus, and it can cause the thalamus to not function properly and cause information that should be being transmitted into the limbic system to not be translated properly, and that can create a problem. That goes to just our physical health. Your physical body does affect your thinking. Okay, but the limbic system is kind of the next big portion of your brain past your spinal column, and that limbic system is where the reward center of your brain is at. Okay, that's where you get the dopamines released and all of those type of chemicals, the serotonins and dopamines and so forth. And it actually is kind of what that portion of your brain that signals the body to release the adrenals and the adrenaline and all those type of things. So that limbic system is what is functioning or directing all of that. Then beyond the limbic system is your neural cortex. That's the outer portion of your brain, and it has different regions that relate to different things. Your frontal lobe relates often to your self-control and disciplines and all of that type of stuff, and different portions of your brain relate to different aspects. Now, That being said, it doesn't mean that the brain does all your thinking, but it does mean that the soul does use the brain. Okay? And so the Bible's telling us rightly, because we can overcome the way the brain thinks. You can reprogram the physical brain. Well, how can the physical brain reprogram itself? It doesn't do that. The soul, the inner man, can override the way the brain thinks. Okay? But within the brain, what happens often in the physical realm, and this directly relates to addiction, is that the brain develops these connectors between triggers and responses, right? And so the triggers that it associates with a particular thing cause the neural pathway to be to be hit, and the neural pathway says, "Hey, when this trigger is present, here's what we want to do." Right? Sometimes if we think about the statement we use, sometimes you hear muscle memory, right? That's that immediate response. That's what soldiers are looking for. That they get it to that neural pathway so strong, so cleanly developed that that moment X happens, they respond immediately, and they don't even have to take thought about it. Right? They don't have to like go through a thought process. How should I think and respond here? Right? They're just immediately responding. Well, the same is true with addiction. Trigger, response, trigger, response. And that thought process in the brain is due to that highly developed neural pathway that leads to drink, do drugs, look at porn, whatever that response is. Okay, often those triggers are physical things that we might see. Sometimes there are situations that might happen. I think probably the biggest trigger anyone deals with is just stress. When they're under stress, stress triggers neural pathways that say, get out of this feeling. I don't like this feeling, right? And so then the body says, how do we deal with this? We don't know how to deal with it. Drink. We don't know how to deal with it. Porn. We don't know how to deal with it. Drugs, right? And so stress is a major trigger factor, and stress can come in all kinds of ways, can't it? Stress can come with a conflict with your spouse or parents or children, whatever the case might be. Stress can come at work when there's deadlines that are approaching, or when there's conflict with coworkers or management and so forth. When there's what? When a staff member quits, right? Been there, right? And so stress can come in church, right? In that situation, and you're relying on somebody to do something, and you're expecting someone to do a certain thing, and they don't, and then it falls on you, and all those type of factors, right? Stress comes through money, stress comes through relationships, stress comes through physical factors, health issues that come into your life that you weren't expecting, and now all of a sudden you've got this physical affliction that you're dealing with, and so all of these things can be triggers, right? But then more innocuous things can be triggers. When I say that, I mean things that you wouldn't necessarily observe or think about. Stopping at a stop sign can be a trigger. Getting your paycheck can be a trigger, right? You get that paycheck, and if you've built that neural pathway that says paycheck, bar, right? Paycheck, drug dealer. Okay, you get your check, and you get in your car, and you hit that stop sign, and you're like, turn left, go to the liquor store, right? I mean, there's all kinds of triggers that can be, both physical, both time related, environment related. It can be things that you smell, things that you see, sounds that you hear, a particular person, or a phone call from them, or seeing them. It can be all types of things, but it triggers that neural pathway and a response. Okay. If you're going to deal with addiction, the first and easiest way to begin dealing with it is to get a good understanding of that process, right? That you got to start focusing in on eliminating as many of the triggers as you can, right? So you can't eliminate all stress, That's not even a possible thing in this life, right? Now, when you're in heaven, you won't have any more stress. Okay. But here, it's coming, right? And so you've got to understand that. However, you can build new neural pathways for response. You can reprogram the brain. That's why I'm saying this in this fashion that yes, the brain thinks, but the soul, the thinking of the soul is superior to the thinking of the brain, and it can rewrite the hard drive. Okay? And it can reprogram it. And we can abandon certain bad neural pathways and we can install better neural pathways, better responses. And the more that we respond this way, consciously responding this way, then the less that this bad neural pathway is used, it doesn't ever go away, which is, by the way, the reason that secular worldview says once you're an addict, you're always an addict, because the pathway never actually fully goes away, but over time, unused, it becomes dormant. Okay? It doesn't become dominant. The path you use is the dominant one. Okay? And so the more you use a right path, the more dominant it becomes. The less you use a wrong path, the more dormant it becomes. And so you've got to let your soul, your inner man, in your thought life and your soul is able to reprogram the physical brain and get that victory in your life. And so the problem is, though, if you've had these wrong thinking, and because the wrong thinking has been present and acted on, you now have feelings, and those wrong feelings. I've never tasted alcohol. Well, I've never tasted alcohol that I knew I was tasting. I'll say that. I may have had at a restaurant something in, how they might put something in. I don't know if I have. Okay, but I've never drank alcohol. The thing is, I don't crave it. You know why? Because I haven't had it. Does that make sense? So I don't have these feelings. Some guys get off work. They got off work today and they're like, I got to have a beer, right? And that feeling was very strong because they've had that experience, and the thoughts and the feelings are connected now in that regard. I don't have those feelings. Now, I do sometimes have the feeling I need chocolate, so I have had chocolate. But I'm not saying I'm free from all bad feelings. Look at me. I mean, come on. Okay. But at the same time, even in those physical areas, in the food areas, guess what? I have to take responsibility to bring those into obedience to Christ too, right? Okay, so I can't excuse one as well. It's not like I'm doing drugs, I mean, so that makes it all okay. No, it doesn't make it okay. I'm still responsible to possess my vessel in righteousness and holiness, right? And so my feelings have to be put down sometimes in obedience to God's thinking, and my thinking has to be changed. And the more my thinking changes, the more my feelings begin to change. And that's a faith process. Like think about it like this, like regarding forgiveness, all right? If someone has hurt you, you have this feeling toward them. You have this bitter, hurt, offended spirit toward them. When their name comes up, you wince, right? Ugh, right? And someone might say, is that a problem for you? You get a problem with them? Nope, I'm fine. Right? But you do. It's there. And sometimes we'll even say, well, I'm dealing with it. Like that phrase, I'm dealing with it. I'm trying to forgive. You ever said that? Trying. All right, so that's a misconception of what forgiveness actually is, because that is a conception of forgiveness that relies on my ability. And biblically, my forgiveness isn't about my ability, it's about Christ's sacrifice and the sufficiency of Christ's sacrifice. But because I have this feeling, every time I see that person, every time I hear about that person, every time the circumstance that happened comes up or something reminds me of it, my feelings here, and then my thinking spirals. Okay? My thinking is spiraling because of my feelings. And I thought I had control over my thinking, and now it's all like, I'm in that wrestling match. All right, so how do I deal with that? Well, biblically, I accept that Christ's sacrifice is sufficient for the offense, right? I make a faith decision to accept the sacrifice of Christ as sufficient. It goes against how I feel, and it goes against my natural way of thinking. But I, by faith, accept the sacrifice of Christ as sufficient. And I would confess that, God, I choose to forgive them for Christ's sake. I believe and accept that He was sufficient for that offense. Now, it doesn't change my feeling at the moment of impact, right? But I make the choice. And I make the choice again, and I make the choice again, and I make the choice again every day, making that same choice. What happens over time is that my feelings begin to change. And they begin to, for a while, it's like, well, it doesn't hurt like it used to hurt, right? Well, it's not, it's more of a moderate annoyance sometimes, right? And then eventually it's like, I just don't hardly ever think about it. And when their name comes up, it doesn't affect me. Why? Because I've continued to make the right decision, and my feelings have begun adjusting over time. Last year, some point, I don't remember when, but last year at some point, I decided to get in shape. Right now, I've since repented of that, and I've looked it up. Round is a shape. All right, so I'm already in shape, but anyway, but I I decided I'm going to get in shape, and and this was in my head. I'm going to do 100 push-ups a day, right? And I don't know what I thought that was like. I just thought, I guess I was kind of like, yeah, I'm just going to do 100 push-ups, and that doing 100 push-ups every day will make me get in shape, right? I wasn't thinking I can't do 100 push-ups. I was thinking I'm just going to do 100 push-ups. So I started that first day. I remember I was so excited. I told Angela the night before, I'm like, tomorrow morning, 100 push-ups, right? And she's like, yeah, good, awesome. I'm excited, She likes to see me, you know. So I get up that morning and I went out to our trailer in our fifth wheel out here. I moved the ottoman out of the way and I got down and I started, man. Push up number 1. My hands hurt. I'm like, that's weird. That's like one, my hands were just putting them down like that. That was weird, right? So I adjusted. Push up number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5. I'm like, wait a minute. 5 push-ups. I'm doing 100 today. That's not good. And so then I thought, I know what I'll do. I'll do girl push-ups. Now we call them modified push-ups, all right? Because we don't do girl push-ups. So modified push-ups. So on the knees, and I'm doing the push-ups, and I get 10 more. So I got 15 push-ups, and that was it, right? I mean, that was it for the day. And I thought, I cannot believe that a manly man like myself has been brought to this low state of 15 push-ups and 10 of those being girl push-ups. And I'm thinking, this is ridiculous. This is not right. And I thought, all right, tomorrow I'm doing the 100, but I couldn't do any more that day. And so the next day I get out there and I get to 5 again. And I was done. And so I go back to the modified and I get 20 that day. And so then I just decided I'm just going to start doing the modified, and I'm just going to get myself to 100 modified. It took me a week to get to that point with modified, and then I started trying to get to the full extension. And by the way, I did get to 100 push-ups in one day, and then I quit. All right, and I'll tell you why. Okay, because I thought at first, well, the soreness will go away after a day or two. And then after a week or two, and it still was sore every day. And I'm like, this is absurd. And when I hit 100 push-ups that day and I was still sore, I said, I don't want to be sore the rest of my life. Now, I know theoretically, if I would have kept just maintaining that 100, the soreness would have gone away, but my feelings overpowered my will. But until I hit it, my pride overpowered my feelings. I will do 100 push-ups. Once I did, I'm like, that's it. I proved I can do it, right? I am the man. All right? And if you've not done 100 push-ups in one day, you can't say anything. Okay. That's done. But I'm positive I could do at least 3 tonight, okay? So that's after a long day. It's been a long day already. So anyway, but why? So what I'm talking about how our feelings and our decisions can be really at odds with one another, right? I've often started diets with a great desire, but I've never ended day 3 with any desire. My feelings are often bigger on end of day 1, day 2, day 3. And if you're going to get to that place where you lose the weight, you've got to push through where your decision making, your faith decision has overpowered your feelings. They've got to come in alignment. I know that does happen, right? When I diet and I get clean, my system gets clean, there comes that point where you're like, I don't ever want to eat bad food again because I feel so good when I eat good food. And then someone brings a cupcake along, right? And it's like, well, do I want to feel good or do I want to feel good? And it's like, what's the deal? Okay. Can I say this? As every one of you understand what I'm saying right there, that's how drug addicts feel. That's how alcoholics feel about that substance. It's and you say, that's it? That? They can't say no. I mean, it's more serious than a cupcake. All right. But it's the same, it's by scale, okay? But it's the same principle, right? And that principle you have to get that understanding that it's like they want to make the decision. They do want to make the decision. And sometimes we are maybe pretty hard on this idea of, well, if they want to quit, they will quit, right? And there's a truth to that, but there's also the truth that there is that time lag between the decision factor and the willpower and the feelings and the physical desire for those feelings, right? That has to come into alignment. It will come into alignment in time, but it takes time. And so the question is then, how do I continue to think right until my feelings come into alignment? That's the problem right there. Okay? Because when you look at this process, the reality is feelings and thoughts and feelings lead to decisions. Decisions, right? Which lead to let me think here. No, yeah, which lead to actions, which lead to habits. Which lead to lifestyle. And then your lifestyle reinforces your thinking. And everybody I'm around thinks like this, right? Because you know what you do over time is you get rid of people in your life that don't support the way you think about things. You surround yourself with people that think like you think now. Someone who is in addiction doesn't want to feel guilty about it, so they don't want to be around people that tell them they shouldn't be doing it. Right? So they cut off those relationships. They isolate themselves, and they isolate themselves to people that don't condemn them for their decisions, that support them, that understand why they feel this way and do these things, right? It's that lifestyle reinforcement that takes place. And if they're going to change, this is one of the big issues and reasons for having a hope ministry. If they're going to change, they have to build a different community than the one that's currently supporting their lifestyle. And community matters, right? Being in the right community changes a lot of things. It doesn't mean that they automatically stop struggling up here, but it does mean that they've made that commitment to say, okay, I know I need to be around people that are going to tell me that this feeling, that I shouldn't follow the feeling, right? That I should resist, that I can do it, that I can think differently and I can change. I know I need to be around people that are encouraging me to change instead of encouraging me to continue to do the things that are destroying my life, right? So the Hope program is that introduction to that different community. Your church is a different community, right? That's why it's important that your church is in connection with or in understanding. We preached about this yesterday here at Tri-City, that Tri-Town, Tri-City, Tri-Town. on the website, it got spelled wrong. It's spelled TRY town, like Tri Town Baptist, right? And so it's fixed, right? But anyway, at Tri Town Baptist, right? This is a family then that is going to have a different lifestyle, and these people have different habits, hopefully, right? Okay, their actions are different. Now, when someone first starts trying to make the decision, it feels awkward to be around people that are living different than the way they've lived. They just like, these people are weirdos. You know, what's wrong with them? None of them go to the bar at all. Like, none of them are, but we hope, right? At least outside of the deacons, right? I mean, so most of the staff, is okay. But right, no, the point being that it's like, you are strange to someone who has been integrated into the lifestyle of, substance abuse is normal. It's not odd. Everybody goes out and gets drunk on Friday, right? It's not odd. Everybody smokes a little pot. It's everywhere, right? You can't drive down the street without smelling it. You can't drive to work without passing a couple pot shops. You're the weird ones. Come on, you're the weird ones. Okay. And yet we get this judgmental spirit about people that for the most part the world has supported, that their lifestyles, not only is it normal, it's acceptable, it's okay, and as long as it doesn't get out of control. And when does it get out of control? Well, when you start missing work, when you can't pay your bills. You understand 70% of addicts are what the world would call functional addicts. They work jobs, they have families, broken families, sometimes divorced, whatever, but they have wives or have had wives, they have girlfriends, they have, husbands and boyfriends and kids, and life is normal in that sense. And by the way, it is the normal way Americans live. That is the normal. You're the odd ones. You need to get that in your understanding. You are the odd ones. So why do you look at them and be judgmental when you're the weird one? Took my daughter to when she was in third grade, my daughter Charity, to get state testing done. We were pastoring in Oregon, and so I dropped her off at the Christian school, right, and to get the testing done. And I picked her up for lunch, and when I picked her up, she gets in the car and she goes, "Dad, everyone there is weird." And I said, "Everyone?" She said, "All of them. They're all weird." I said, "Were they all weird in a similar way?" She goes, "Yeah, they were all the same kind of weird." And I said, "And you weren't like them?" "No." I said, "Honey, I don't want to burst your bubble here, but you're the weird one." And she goes, "Dad, don't be silly. I know what normal is." Okay. And then she said this, and this is one of the funniest things I've ever heard. She said, "I'm the only normal person I know." Right. And like, we all think that way, don't we? We do. I'm the only normal person I know. And but we are the ones that are out of step with the average person's lifestyle. Okay. Now, we're not wrong, but we're also not normal. Okay. But when someone comes into hope, we've got to remember this, that everyone they've been around, all of their neighbors, much of their family potentially, right? Their co-workers, they all have the same lifestyle. They're around these people. And so when they quit drinking, it's weird to everyone they actually spend time with. That change means that they become ostracized in their own culture and society. And they need a place of belonging. The church is that place. Hope is that place, right? Where we're encouraging them. I know that the feelings are strong. I know the old habits and lifestyle, it's still there, right? But you can change how you think, and you can get past the feelings. It is possible. And can I say this? Every one of us have had to do that. It may not have been drugs, it may not have been alcohol, but it's been something. And if you're here today and you say, I've never had to overcome sin in my life, then you need to get saved. Because you just don't even, like, you're so far outside of the realm of what the Bible teaches, right? Every one of us has been there in different things. And we're still there. Like, I'm still trying to get victory over things in my life. I'm still working on areas in my life, and I will be until I die. And you will be too. There's not going to be perfection as long as we're in this flesh. Okay? But there are areas in our life where we have previously had those habits and lifestyle that reinforced our thinking, and we got victory over them, and to the point that our feelings have been changed and we no longer feel the same way about those things, right? And that victory, we have moved away from that, and now we have a different perspective and a different view, but that doesn't mean we're still not dealing with some things in our life. And I'm thankful that there's things in my life that God's given me that full victory over, right? But don't get arrogant about that. When I first started dealing with issues in my own life, and I was pastoring, I had pastored for 5 years. We started 2 churches. We started in ministry when I was only 19 years old, 1994. And I really thought I was pretty much a perfect Christian early on. And you say, you didn't. I did, and so did you. Right? You kind of have that, like, I've got it all figured out point, right? And then my marriage fell apart, and I had massive anger issues. But I didn't think I had the problem. I thought Angela had the problem, right? If she wouldn't make me mad, I wouldn't be mad. Duh, right? I don't know why it's so hard for everyone to understand. It's Angela, okay? And so when we finally got counseling, and that dumb counselor kept saying it was my fault, and he obviously didn't know. I tried to explain it to him, but he wasn't listening. And so we went through that whole process, and I really got to that point where I finally came to the acceptance that, okay, anger's my problem. But I still had this weird idea that if I overcome this, I will in fact be perfect. Like, there's nothing else. What else is there, right? It's that. That's it, right? And so if I get that, then of course God's going to use me. I mean, how could he not? And so I start dealing with the anger, and God does give me victory. And the more the anger issue started to be diminished in my life, it's like you ever walked up steps on a hill, and you're like, all you see for a while are the steps, and you're walking and you're just looking and you're seeing the steps. And then you finally get to those last couple steps and you're starting to crest over, and you see, and you're like, oh, there's like mountains behind here. And you look back and go, oh, that wasn't a very big hill at all, in fact. And I started to see all the stuff behind that was just like rotten. I'm talking about my own experience. And I began to realize I got a lot of stuff I need to deal with, right? All those books back there are filled up with the testimonies of all the dumb stuff I've had to deal with, right? And I've got like 23 more books coming. At least, all right? My kids are taking wagers now on how many books I'll end up writing. So if you know them, you can get in on the pool. But anyway, but it's stuff I've had to deal with. Like, as you start getting that view, and one of the things that'll help you become successful in helping others is when you understand that about yourself. You cannot approach others with this, like, I have arrived and I'm here to be the perfect example in your life. You've got to be real about the fact that you're still going through this same process with some things in your life. and it is a process. It's not that you're an addict forever and ever and ever. It's that you're a sinner, and sin has had dominion in your life. And one by one, you're having to deal with those, and you're going to have to make that continuing change of the thought life in your inner man with the aid of the Holy Spirit until you reprogram the physical man and the feelings come into alignment with the truth, right? So that's a big process. All right, we're going to take a break until the top of the hour, and then we will pick up from there. All right. Where's the food?